All right, we'll move on from assault to what?
We've had some questions on visitor visas and temporary visas. Craig, what did we receive?
Our lawyer viewer asks the question of, my brother's visit has been rejected and he wanted to come see the World Cup cricket. It's said that he has not travelled to Australia before, but he has. So what can he do about disputing this? Because obviously he's been to Australia already.
All right. The question is whether he wants to come back again because the World Cup is now come and gone. So if the department has indicated that he has or something factually incorrect, so you have the chance to correct it in the next visitor visa if you are interested in still continuing lodging a visitor visa application. If it is factually incorrect, it is incorrect. The department could have easily checked the movement records and found whether he has been to Australia before or not. I think I'll go a little bit further and give our viewers an idea. The whole purpose of assessing the criteria under a visitor visa regime is whether a person will come, visit and go back. So his incentives, his or her incentives to go back and the attachments in the other country is more rather than your incentives to stay here. And that's called genuine visitor visa criteria. But it's not defined in law. We depend on the meaning of the word, the dictionary meaning of the word, whether you are a genuine visitor. But they consider the genuineness and also the incentives to return back. So either you could apply again, and it's your duty to tell the case officer or to the department the incentives that you have to return back. And also provide evidences. If you just fill in an application the way that the department has indicated, it does not give the case officer more about yourself. So you have to tell about yourself.
So this won't go to court, this will be a tribunal hearing?
Well, tribunal takes time. If you think and if you are planning to come again in the near future, rather than going to the tribunal, you would know the strength and the weaknesses of your application from just what I said. If you think you haven't included your previous travel documents, travel history to other countries, Western countries, even to Australia, include them. Include your bank statement, include if you're doing a permanent job, include evidence of that. Include a family tree, relationships that you have, likewise.
Okay, sounds like you have to give everything over to the department.
I would suggest as a lawyer to be successful and not to expect a rejection, so you give whatever you can.
It's more about the transparency, isn't it? About your application.
Yes, and the evidences to satisfy the requirements for that visa, legal requirements, yes.
Okay.
All right, moving on, I think the next question.
Yes, there is another question from a student in relation to them finishing studies. She asks, do I need to apply for a temporary resident visa or can I lodge a permanent residency application straight away? And once I lodge the new visa, can I work full-time? And what will happen to my student visa?
All right, I have to answer this question because I am an immigration lawyer. It's a difficult question in a way because we can only give information in general. We cannot give specific legal advice. We need to know more about the circumstances.
Everyone's case would be different.
Different as well from case to case, case by case assessment. In general, of course, the shortest answer that I can give is if you meet the requirements for a particular visa, either temporary resident visa or a permanent visa, and if you want to do it, go for it. Whether you meet the requirements or not, we have to assess and say. So a lot of international students in Australia, a temporary resident visa or a permanent visa straight after finishing studies may be an option. And Australian government has encouraged students to go through either pathway, either temporary, because there is a specific visa that international students can apply after finishing their studies. It's called 485 visa subclass. And that is the answer to that question. I also see that in that question, whether the student, once he lodged the application, can travel. I will relate it to the question before as well. Traveling on a student visa after finishing studies is a bit dangerous and risky. Just because you apply for another visa and just because that you are eligible for a bridging visa and a bridging visa has been given does not mean that you're on that visa. You're still on your student visa until that visa expires. So that expiry date may be somewhat later and you may have already finished your studies. So if you go outside and wanting to come back, immigration officials might refuse your entry back to Australia because you're not enrolled in an Australian study, and that is a visa condition. If you're not fulfilling that, you are in trouble. So the advice is either go when your bridging visa is active and so on. So that's the general advice that I can give.
So where would our viewers find this information in regards to visa criteria?
A good question, Craig. I'm tempted to say there's a lot of information in the Department of Immigration website. However, I'm not saying that. The reason is this. There is information. Whether that information is correct or wrong, no one can actually say. If you want to find out the legal criteria, because the visa is based on a particular law or a regulation or the Migration Act, you must visit the Act. And the only place that I can suggest to find the Act is ComLaw website. That is, I consider that as the only authoritative website where you can find the correct version of the law. Of course, you can get a hard copy of the Immigration Act and the regulations and refer to it. But it's a good question.
Okay, so I just type into my search engine the Immigration Act or Migration Act, correct?
I would say go to ComLaw.
Mm-hmm.
And if you do a Google search, go to ComLaw. If there may be a number of searches coming up, including some of the famous legal databases, but go to ComLaw. That's what I would say.
Okay.
And the regulations and the criteria are all stated there. Any more bets?